evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Today on Capitol Hill, lawmakers pass a bill to stave off a government shutdown until December 3rd. And the future of President Biden's Build Back Better agenda remains uncertain as one moderate Democrat says the spending bill is a bit too pricey. A bill in Arkansas could allow natural immunity to exempt people from the vaccine. And a group of Republican lawmakers from the Doctors' Caucus urged the CDC to acknowledge natural immunity from the CCP virus. They accuse the agency of ignoring scientific evidence. The Department of Homeland Security plans to end the Remain in Mexico policy. This comes after the United States Supreme Court ordered them to reinstate the policy last month. NTD had an exclusive interview with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton to find out what this means for the southern border. Facebook defends itself in front of angry lawmakers. A bipartisan group of senators grilled a company executive for hiding Instagram's harmful effects on kids. And you may want to order your holiday gifts a little earlier this year. The United States Postal Service is implementing new service standards tomorrow, which means possible slowdowns for some mail. The House and Senate have passed a bill that would extend government funding through early December. The move comes in the nick of time as government funding will expire at midnight tonight. NTD's Kevin Hogan has the details.
The Senate voted 65-35 to pass H.R. 5305 to fund the government through December 3rd. Then the bill passed the House.
The yeas on this vote, the yeas are 254, the nays are 175. The motion is adopted, and without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
This comes after Senate Democrats attempted to pass a bill that would raise the debt ceiling while avoiding a shutdown, but Republicans blocked it.
Clumsy efforts at partisan jams do not work. What works is when the majority accepts the reality of the situation. We're able to fund the government today because the majority accepted reality. The same thing will need to happen on the debt limit next week.
The bill would keep the government funded at current levels and provide over $6 billion for Afghan evacuees and more than $26 billion for disaster relief. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says they are sending the bill to Biden for his signature.
We hope that this can be a strongly bipartisan bill because it keeps vital services running, protects up to hundreds of thousands of workers from furloughs, and protects the economy from shutdowns. A shutdown is not anything anyone wants. It was never thought that we would have one, but nonetheless, it will happen today.
The bill also extends some expiring programs like national flood insurance and temporary assistance for needy families, as well as programs involving accrediting higher education and researching public diplomacy and international broadcasting. But avoiding the shutdown is only one crisis Congress is facing this week. It still needs to address the debt ceiling. If they don't raise the country's borrowing limit by October 18th, the U.S. could default on its debt for the first time in history, something economists say would be an economic disaster. Republicans are preventing the debt limit from being raised, saying Democrats will have to include it in their $3.5 trillion budget package in an apparent effort to spotlight what McConnell calls inflationary socialism. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
And Democrats on Capitol Hill face a roadblock to passing their sweeping $3.5 trillion spending package. Moderate Democrat Joe Manchin, a make-it-or-break-it vote, committed to a top-line number of $1.5 trillion. Manchin says he doesn't want our society to adopt an entitlement mentality. NTD's Melina Weiskup brings us the details from Capitol Hill.
President Biden has been meeting with congressional Democrats all week so they can communicate how to move forward on their plan to fund social welfare and climate projects, something that Biden has termed his Build Back Better agenda. But it's unclear how much of this agenda can actually be achieved now. Democrats need all 50 votes in the Senate in order to get it done. But that looks like it's going to be a problem now, with moderate Democrat Senator Joe Manchin coming out today saying he does not support such a massive price tag. Let's listen.
My top line has been 1.5 because I believe in my heart that what we can do and what the needs we have right now and what we can afford to do without basically changing our whole society to an entitlement mentality.
Biden and the Congressional Progressives' $3.5 trillion plan would fund a variety of social welfare projects like helping pay for child care and expanding affordable housing to be paid for with a tax on the wealthy. But a Manchin's newly announced top-line number is much smaller than what the Progressives propose, and they aren't backing down.
Whatever. Well, I don't have an offer in front of me. My number is 3.5. Our number is 3.5. Somebody has a different offer, then they can put it on the table.
Jayapal has been on the forefront of rallying behind Biden's Build Back Better plan, an agenda that's now uncertain. But Manchin says his fiscally conservative top-line number shouldn't be a surprise to anyone.
I've never been a liberal in any way, shape, or the form. There's no one who's ever thought I was. Elect more liberals. But I'm not asking them to change. I'm willing to come from 0 to 1.5.
Now, with this latest resistance from Senator Joe Manchin, as well as pushback from progressives in the House, it really puts the entire Biden agenda at risk. Not just the social spending portion, but also the smaller, hard infrastructure side. Because progressives in the House say they will not pass that smaller infrastructure bill without this massive social spending bill. So we'll see how Biden and congressional leadership plans to overcome these obstacles. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The pandemic has killed almost 700,000 Americans. Today, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy renewed his calls for Congress to hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable for the virus.
We should be able to have the ability for anyone who lost their lives to hold China accountable, be it in the courts, just as we did after 9/11. Thirdly, I think we should make sure that all the nations together should not reward China with the Olympics. So there are a number of things that we can do. We should also make sure that the funding of where our money goes, if it goes to a grant or somewhere else, for the idea of the studying of what was happening in China, make sure no money goes there ever again.
Congressional Republicans who serve on the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Crisis have been looking into the origins of the CCP virus. And McCarthy's plan calls for all the intelligence gathered about the origins of the virus to be released to all the nations of the world. The minority leader calls this a China crisis that must be dealt with. And Republicans in both the Arkansas legislature and the U.S. Congress are pushing for a recognition of natural immunity from the CCP virus. They say this has never been more important since numerous unvaccinated workers could soon lose their jobs. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
Lawmakers in Arkansas advanced a bill Wednesday that would allow workers with natural antibodies against the CCP virus to opt out of vaccine requirements. The bill would also require the state to pay unemployment benefits to workers who lose their jobs for refusing to comply with a vaccine mandate. According to Arkansas lawmakers, the state's House and Senate Public Health Committees endorsed the legislation. It now goes to the full House for consideration. The CDC doesn't recognize natural immunity against the CCP virus as a substitute for vaccination. The agency said on August 6 that a study from Kentucky found that the vaccine offers higher protection than previous COVID-19 infection. However, a group of Congress members with medical degrees is calling on the CDC to change its stance. On Tuesday, 15 Republican lawmakers from the Doctors Caucus sent a letter to the CDC strongly urging them to acknowledge natural immunity. They say it's never been more important to recognize natural immunity because so many workers, including members of the military and healthcare professionals, could soon lose their jobs for not complying with mandates. The letter argues that natural immunity has been dismissed without adequate scientific acknowledgement and accuses the CDC of ignoring scientific evidence when making policies to achieve herd immunity. The letter cites about a dozen studies that support natural immunity and references recent data from Israel that suggests natural immunity offers greater protection from severe disease than the vaccine does. In some parts of the world, such as countries in the European Union, natural immunity is already recognized as a form of natural immunity on par with vaccination. The lawmakers have given the CDC until October 18th to respond. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
The Department of Homeland Security is again trying to stop the Remain in Mexico policy after the Supreme Court ruled they reinstated the policy last month. NTD's Jason Perry spoke with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton to find out more on the situation at the border.
On Wednesday, the Department of Homeland Security said they were going to issue a memo to try to end the Remain in Mexico policy again. We spoke with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton to see what this entails.
Well, not surprising that they would want to end a program that's successful at keeping people out of here that are illegal, because they've clearly told us from the beginning they want as many people to come across the border illegally as possible. So whatever federal law, whatever policies have worked, they're trying to undo and create a situation where they get as many millions of people coming across the border every year. And that's the goal.
Paxton also commented on the Haitians arriving at the southern border.
The Biden administration gave them special status. If they come in, they can't be deported. So the word is out, and it's purposely, they were purposely invited to come. So it didn't work out optically well for all those Haitians to be on the border. So I'm sure they're going to move them in just as fast as they finally move these other people in, and send them all over the country. And whatever, health issues are related to them, or whatever crime is related to them, whatever cost, we're all going to have to bear it in our individual states. And the federal government will continue to do this until we find some way to get the president to be accountable for his job under the Constitution and to the American people.
According to reports, the Panama foreign minister is warning that a migrant surge of approximately 60,000 people, most of them Haitians, are headed to the U.S. southern border. Arrests at the U.S.-Mexico border soared over 200,000 in each of the last couple of months. And according to data, it's on track to set a new yearly record. Jason Perry, NTD News.
The Biden administration announced today new rules on arresting and deporting illegal immigrants. Starting November 29th, authorities can only pursue those who entered into the country after November 1st, 2020 without permission or are deemed to pose a threat to public safety. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said they can't go after all people in the country without legal status, and they shouldn't try because many have been contributing members of our communities for years. And Republican and Democratic senators are united today in criticizing Facebook. They questioned a company executive over what they call the toxic effects of Instagram on kids and teenagers. Here's more on the Senate hearing.
This research is not a bombshell. It's not causal research. It's in fact just directional research that we use for product changes.
This research is a bombshell.
Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, chairman of the subcommittee on consumer protection, grilled Facebook's global head of safety, Antigone Davis, in a hearing on Thursday. He says while Facebook publicly denies that Instagram is deeply harmful to teens, privately, Facebook researchers and experts have been ringing the alarm for years.
Substantial evidence suggests that experiences on Instagram and Facebook make body dissatisfaction worse, particularly viewing attractive images of others, viewing filtered images, posting selfies, and viewing content with certain hashtags.
A whistleblower gave Blumenthal's office thousands of pages on Facebook's internal findings. The Wall Street Journal also reported that in the findings, 1/3 of teenagers said Instagram made their body image issues worse. Among teenagers who had suicidal thoughts, 13% of British users and 6% of American users said they could trace those thoughts to Instagram.
Facebook researchers have concluded that teens, quote, have an addict's narrative about their use. Have an addict's narrative about their use. Another survey, also not disclosed publicly, found that, quote, over 1/3 of teens felt they have, quote, only a little control or no control at all over how Instagram makes them feel.
Facebook, which owns Instagram, paused plans to create Instagram for kids under 13 only after the backlash earlier this week. Ranking Republican member of the subcommittee, Senator Marsha Blackburn, brought up that Facebook is also encouraging kids to create secondary accounts they could hide from their parents.
You've lost the trust, and we do not trust you with influencing our children, with reading in to their minds. They also don't want Facebook collecting data on their children.
The Facebook executive disputes the committee's and the Wall Street Journal's conclusions on the research. She defends her company by saying the reports have been misrepresented, had limitations, and could not prove causality.
And I think what's been lost in this report is that, in fact, with this research, we found that more teen girls actually find Instagram helpful. Teen girls who are suffering from these issues find Instagram helpful than not.
In terms of policy changes, several senators say they need to update the 1988 Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which governs how websites gather data about kids. Davis promises her company will not retaliate against the whistleblower, but stops short of committing to wider immunity. The whistleblower will testify before the Senate next Tuesday.
The annual Congressional baseball game is back. Last year it was canceled due to the CCP virus pandemic, but this year NTD's Arian Pazdar has the highlights.
The game took place at Nationals Park in Washington, D.C. Wednesday evening. President Biden also attended. There was a smattering of boos when he appeared, and some fans unfurled a Trump 2024 banner in the stands. The president mingled in both the Democrats and the Republican dugouts. As he was talking to Republicans, this happened.
And now the president taking a moment with the Republicans. Earlier, he was on the Democratic side when the Democrats were trying to get caught up. Wow, this is a long
Greg Stubbe with the first pitch, and the first swing is going to be a home run. Stubbe out of the ballpark into the left field bleachers. Stubbe with the very first offering from Pete Aguilar swings and sends it to left field and out. While everybody's milling with the president, they played baseball, and Stubbe wants to bring the attention back to the field.
Absolutely. I believe that is the first out-of-the-park home run in this game in more than 40 years.
Republican Congressman Greg Stubbe, of course, was cheered on by teammates who came rushing out of their dugout. But even Democratic Congressman Pete Aguilar, who threw the pitch, couldn't help but smile at what happened. After 7 innings, Republicans won 13-12. The very last out was recorded by none other than Stubbe himself, who hit the home run earlier in the game.
Stubbe's got it, and that's the ball game.
Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
The next present you send to a loved one might get there late if you're not prepared. The United States Postal Service is implementing its new service standards Friday, which means possible slowdowns for some mail. NTD's Faye Corder has more.
Starting Friday, October 1st, the United States Postal Service is implementing new service standards. In a 2-page fact sheet, the USPS says delivery times will be longer for certain first-class mail and periodicals, and that mail traveling the greatest distances will be the most impacted. First-class mail that currently takes 3 days may be subject to a 3, 4, or 5-day standard, and 61% of first-class mail and 93% of periodicals will be unaffected. The new standards are part of the service's Delivering for America 10-year plan, which aims to modernize the post office and make it more competitive. It was introduced earlier this year by Trump appointee Louis DeJoy, who says the post office is in crisis and that he's seen steep annual financial losses in the billions of dollars. He says the plan will dramatically improve service through strategies aligned to the changing needs of our customers. Faye Corder, NTD News.
Manhattan's Union Square is adorned with statues of American icons like Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. The square now has 3 new sculptures, including one of George Floyd. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
Because even after all
sculptures of former congressman and civil rights activist John Lewis, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd were unveiled in Union Square on Thursday. They're part of an exhibit by Confront Art. The artist, Chris Carnabucci, says his project highlights injustice, an issue his 3 subjects dealt with. George Floyd's brother worked with the project's organizers.
We are acknowledging that we're woke, we're going to stay woke, and we're going to do this in love, peace, and unity, and we're going to keep healing together.
Carnabucci tells me his work's message is relative to the viewer.
So they might look at it and be offended by, George Floyd because they think maybe he didn't live the life that they would presume to earn a a sculpture. On the other hand, George Floyd's death was so momentous. I mean, look, no one who heard of Juneteenth before he died, right?
But his sculptures got a lot of support at Union Square. So, what do you think about the sculptures?
I just thought that they're very beautiful. I mean, I recall what happened with the George Floyd and the protests last year, and it is unfortunate, but I thought the artists did a great rendition. The amount of detail that they put in, you can see that there's a lot of love and thought that went into these sculptures.
The park has the other sculptures, so why not add something new?
The impression is really, I mean, it's giving a lot of thought, you know. It's just, I was standing here listening to music, and it's just like all together it gives this feeling like we should do something about it, you know.
But like the artist Carnabucci said, not everyone agrees that Floyd deserves a sculpture done in his name. In a tweet, Congressional Republican candidate George Santos said, "This is an embarrassment. This man didn't deserve to die the way he did, but to raise statues to honor a criminal thug is beyond comprehension." Many others point to Floyd's criminal history, which included drug dealing and robbing a woman at gunpoint. Carnabucci says he hopes his art spurs discussions that can lead people to better understand one another. So this exhibition is temporary, so it'll be here until October 30th. An official told us that after that, there is a chance it'll go on national tour. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
A video on social media is once again bringing attention to the New York City subway. One man has taken the mobile game Subway Surfer to another level. The video starts with one man running on top of a subway car and another man yelling at him to get down. The man with the vest then starts throwing his shoes, apparently trying to knock the man off the car, but he just catches the second shoe and throws it back. The train then leaves the station with the man still on top of it, riding off into the sunset. And coming up, in what may be California's largest illegal marijuana grow operation, authorities seized 100,000 marijuana plants and up to $10 million in cash. And California's governor signed a number of police reform bills into law. One bill would allow police officers to be permanently stripped of their badges if found to have committed serious misconduct. That and more here on NTD News. In Northern California, authorities found a massive marijuana grow operation on Wednesday. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more details.
Over a dozen search warrants were conducted throughout California's East Bay, targeting large illegal grow operations. The Alameda County Sheriff's Office announced that detectives seized 100,000 marijuana plants and up to $10 million in cash from the illegal operation in the city of Oakland. They say it's probably the largest in the state. They also found millions of dollars worth of infrastructure, equipment, lighting, generators, and supplies used to grow the plants. According to the sheriff's office, this organized and sophisticated network of individuals were making tens of millions of dollars in profit and avoiding California marijuana regulations. They will be on site to investigate over the next several days. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
California's governor signed a number of bills focused on police reform. Lawmakers say they hope to make police departments more transparent and accountable and place limits on police power. Here's NTD's Cynthia Kai with more.
California Governor Gavin Newsom signed 8 new police reform bills on Thursday morning. Newsom says the state will increase transparency and invest in more resources and training to create new curriculums and advice for law enforcement officers.
But also creating a new civilian body to review and adjudicate claims as it relates to excessive use and misuse of force.
One of the hallmark bills was Senate Bill 2, which would decertify officers found to have engaged in serious misconduct. 46 states already have a similar law. However, the California Peace Officers Association is concerned about the broad definition of serious misconduct.
What is serious misconduct? That's a conversation that sometimes folks aren't always on the right page, and going forward they're going to have to be in order to comply with the bill.
He says the bill is more than just decertifying police found to have engaged in misconduct.
It has other provisions in there about qualified immunity, but also in the decertification aspect of the bill, it also kind of reduces some of the threshold, so to speak, for police misconduct. And that could be sometimes in conflict with what an agency views as serious misconduct.
An attorney who spoke with the California Judiciary Committee says the bill underwent many revisions, but the definition of serious misconduct and the advisory board composition remain problematic.
The struggle with SB 2, as it was originally written, there was broad power that was put in the part of this advisory board that has this lack of subject matter knowledge and these biases and problems with impartiality.
He says lawmakers worked with stakeholders to make changes that would protect against double jeopardies. Now the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission will review evidence and make the final determination of whether an officer engaged in serious misconduct.
And we think that the law enforcement profession should be treated like any other profession where you have impartial people that know what is misconduct and what's not misconduct and have clear definitions.
SB 2 was among 8 policing reforms that Democratic lawmakers promoted as a package on Wednesday. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
According to CAL FIRE, fires burned over 2.4 million acres of land in California. Officials have said there's a shortage of personnel as out-of-state firefighters provided assistance. But one local fire captain tells NTD's David Lamb that his team wasn't fully utilized.
The fire captain of the Chester Fire Department says the U.S. Forest Service has recently brought in people from the East Coast to assist with wildfires. While there may be a shortage of firefighters, Captain Christopher Dean says his Northern California department has a roster of about 70 personnel retired from various agencies ready to help out. He says there's benefits to hiring his firefighters as they are available, close, and familiar with the local fire conditions.
Chester's contract is actual hours worked versus a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week pay in the CFAA. There's no reimbursement for backfill or cost of benefits.
The CFAA, or California Fire Assistant Agreement, is a contract that dictates how fire personnel and equipment is reimbursed. Chester employees and other local departments are barred from participation, Dean says.
Some have suggested professional jealousy, age, and overqualified individuals, although none of those I can confirm.
The members under the local contract are in their 40s to 70s and qualified for incidents.
Chester maintains all personnel's certifications, including RT-130, a requirement for personnel working federal incidents.
Chester, a mountain town in Northern California, is 7.5 square miles, home to several thousand residents. The town avoided the state's second largest fire, the Dixie Fire, in early August.
Our firefighters have been using every contact available to them to get out and assist on the current wildfires.
We reached out to the U.S. Forest Service for comments, but didn't receive a response by press deadline. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Coming up, shipping rates for freight containers going from China to the U.S. are skyrocketing. Just over the past year, the price went up 400%. And winter brings heightened fears of a power shortage in China. Authorities are now promising residents heat and power. More when we return here on NTD News.
I will bless those who bless you.
Here in Israel and the former Soviet Union, the Jewish people are living in very difficult times. There are now thousands of destitute, elderly Jews who are desperately in need of basic food. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is on the ground with survival food boxes, but the need for food is growing. Call or go online now and say, I will bless these children of Abraham.
It's the elderly widows who are hurting the most. Many of them are also Holocaust survivors who are once again crying out for help. Their need, as you can see, is extremely urgent.
Right now, you can give a gift of life of $25. that will help rush an emergency food box to an elderly Jewish person who doesn't have enough to eat. When you call right now, your gift's impact will be doubled to help save lives.
For over 35 years, this trusted ministry has given Christians like me a way to tangibly bless Jewish people who are in need throughout the world.
Wherever in the world the Jewish people have the greatest need, our spiritual mandate is to feed the hungry and to care for the widows and orphans.
Together, we bring them comfort and love, but just as important, we bring them this life-saving food box.
When you call right now, your gift's impact will be doubled to help save lives. Without your response, their pain and suffering will continue.
Call or go online now and say, I will save a life. I will bless and comfort the Jewish people.
Now we turn to China. Shipping rates from China to the United States have scaled to new highs. It now costs up to $20,000 per 40-foot box. But rates from the U.S. to China are at less than $1,000. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
A blow to China's exports. Shipping rates for freight containers traveling from China to the U.S. have reached a record high. The virus outbreak in several countries slowed container turnaround times. On one of the busiest shipping routes, the China-U.S. East Coast route, the price to ship a container increased 400% compared to last year. In October last year, the price to ship one container was close to $4,000. This month, the price per container rose to close to $20,000. Similarly, shipping freight containers from China to Canada also costs an average of $20,000. The president of China's Port Association says the spike in shipping prices followed a rebound in virus cases in other countries. It slowed turnover speeds at major ports to around 7 to 8 days. These high prices are one-sided, though. Data from freight tracking firm Freightos shows that a shipping container from North America to China costs less than $1,000. The power shortage in China has spread to at least 20 provinces, and it's pushing up the cost of key commodities. For example, cement prices escalated repeatedly, some items tripling in value in just 10 days. In mid-September, a cement producer in the southeastern city of Nanchang announced a price hike of $5. And just 5 days later, another rise of $13. 4 days after that, one more rise of $16. The Southern Autonomous Region of Guangxi imposed a restriction, saying cement production for September cannot exceed 40% of the monthly average from first half of the year. And the coming month's quota will be adjusted according to September's production. Data from Digital Cement Network shows that the average price of cement has risen for 3 consecutive weeks since the start of September. The Deputy Secretary General of China Cement Association says in addition to a power shortage, rising coal prices are adding pressure. A commentator tells Radio Free Asia these energy restrictions are said to be caused by industrial policy adjustments from Beijing. Since the cement market's peak season is approaching, its price is expected to keep rising.
And as winter nears, China is trying to quell fears about power shortages. On Wednesday, Beijing demanded that railway companies and local authorities ship vital coal supplies to utilities.
Fear of power shortages in China are soaring just as winter approaches. The party now seeking to put those fears to rest. On Wednesday, Beijing ordered railway companies and local authorities to ship their coal supplies to utilities. That's as China's key industrial regions grapple with power cuts, especially in 3 northeastern provinces. Now the province's nearly 100 million residents are suffering too. This convenience store worker in Shenyang said the subway was still in operation, but water and electricity were all cut, with people buying candles and borrowing portable chargers. The restrictions come after a collision of tight coal supplies, tougher emissions standards, and high manufacturing demand, which pushed the price of coal to record levels. And along with it came nationwide curbs on power use. In Shenyang City, home to 8 million people, a power cut hit the city for around 8 hours last week, leaving streets in complete darkness.
It was completely dark. I could see nothing because the power was cut from everything. I ride an electric scooter and the light of the scooter was on. Everything else was dark.
Officials have assured residents that all households will have power and heating, but power rationing still remains in effect.
Goldman Sachs says hidden government debt at the local level in China is now more than half the size of China's economy. The debt is all wrapped up in local investments that are not reported on by the central government. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the story.
Local government debt in China rose to $8.2 trillion last year, more than triple what it was in 2013. Investment bank Goldman Sachs says it equates to 52% of the country's gross domestic product and more than the official total of government debt. The debt is created from local government financing vehicles, and these don't show on their balance sheets, so the debt is hidden. Local governments usually make money from selling land, but demand has slumped. And Chinese property developer Evergrande's worsening situation will deter buyers in an industry on the edge of a potential collapse. Local government debt mostly consists of construction, transportation, and industrial conglomerate debt. Jiangsu province had the largest borrowing in 2020, with nearly $1.25 billion. Tianjin, Beijing, Sichuan, Guizhou, and Gansu provinces are the most leveraged. Goldman's study was based on analysing more than 2,000 local government financing vehicle statements and their interest-bearing debt. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Coming up, Melbourne's infection numbers surged to record levels on Thursday, despite Australia enforcing a hard lockdown for nearly 2 months to combat the third wave of the virus. And a former French president is facing a 1-year jail sentence over illegal funding for his 2012 re-election campaign. More in just a moment here on NTD News. In Ecuador, at least 116 people were killed, including a number of beheadings, during clashes in the most deadly act of violence ever reported in the country's prison system. Authorities have linked it to the two gangs vying for control of drug trafficking routes. Louisa Nax reports.
The death toll from prison riots at one of Ecuador's largest penitentiaries has risen to over 100 people, including a number of beheadings. Scores of inmates have been injured. The violence first erupted on Tuesday night at the Penitenciaria de Litoral in Guayas province, which has been the scene of bloody fights between gangs for control of the prison in recent months. It was the most deadly act of violence ever reported in Ecuador's prison system. Similar clashes took place in February and July this year in various prisons throughout the country, which also claimed over 100 lives. Dozens of people have gathered at the jail, seeking information about relatives and demanding accountability from officials responsible for the inmate's safety. A sister of an inmate described the scenes of chaos.
The inmates called us. Sister, they're killing me. Call the police. They need to enter Pavilion 5. Look at where they are. They're out here. It's my brother, not a dog.
Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso has said the state would assist the families of the dead and injured inmates, adding that he would send additional security forces and free up funds to avoid a repeat.
Earlier on Thursday, the National Police sent 400 officers to regain control of the detention center. Soldiers also entered the prison to maintain order. And in Australia, Melbourne's COVID-19 cases surged to record levels on Thursday. That's despite the country enforcing a hard lockdown for nearly 2 months to combat the spread of the Delta variant. Officials blame illegal home gatherings to watch a key sporting event for the spike. Melbourne saw over 1,400 new infections on Thursday. Authorities estimated nearly a third of Thursday's new infections could be traced back to home parties last weekend to watch the Australian Rules football grand final on television. Officials admitted Thursday's numbers, a large jump from 950 cases the day before, is a significant setback in managing the flare-up. Australia's largest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, and the capital, Canberra, are in a weeks-long lockdown to combat a third wave of infections fueled by the fast-moving Delta variant. Authorities have abandoned a COVID-0 strategy and are looking at higher vaccination as their exit strategy from lockdowns. And Sweden eased its COVID-19 restrictions on Wednesday, removing most legal limits on public venues such as restaurants, theaters, and stadiums. For unvaccinated adults, though, authorities still recommend keeping a distance from vulnerable groups and avoiding crowded venues. Sweden has shunned hard lockdowns throughout the pandemic and relied heavily on voluntary recommendations regarding issues such as social distancing and hygiene. It meant schools, restaurants, and shops largely stayed open. However, public gatherings such as concerts, sporting events, and venues such as bars and restaurants had operated under tight crowd limits. Sweden's COVID-19 deaths per capita are less than many European countries that employed hard lockdowns. The government says it's not ruling out introducing domestic vaccine passports. A Paris court today convicted former French President Nicolas Sarkozy. He was found guilty of illegally financing his 2012 re-election campaign. NTD's correspondent David Vives has the story.
Nicolas Sarkozy was handed a one-year prison sentence by a Paris court on Thursday. This is the second time the former French president received this sentence after being found guilty of illegal campaign financing over his failed 2012 re-election bid.
Sarkozy, 66, is unlikely to go to jail. He will appeal the sentence, a move that in effect suspends it, and the judge said he could serve the sentence at home with an electronic tag.
Sarkozy's lawyer, Thierry Herzog, is optimistic about having the conviction overturned.
The punishment is heavier than what was requested by prosecutors, which was rather unusual. Nicolas Sarkozy has been condemned with the maximum punishment, and so I am confident I have no worries about making an appeal.
Sarkozy's Conservative Party, prosecutors said, spent nearly double the $19 million allowed under France's election law. They said the party hired a friendly public relations agency to hide the cost. Several people who played key roles during the campaign were also convicted of fraud and illegal use of campaign funds. They were sentenced to up to 3.5 years in jail, along with hefty fines. Sarkozy has denied the accusations against him for years. David Vives, NTD News.
And one French presidential candidate says she aims to drastically reduce immigration in the country through a national referendum if she's elected next spring.
But today, taking into account the number of illegal migrants in our territory, taking into account the number of the problems that are the direct consequences of this massive immigration into our country, the ghettoization, the communitarianism, the challenges to the laws of the Republic within a certain number of neighbourhoods, the obvious and very heavy consequences in terms of safety, these oblige us to put into effect a plan to drastically reduce immigration.
Marine Le Pen's press briefing took place as France announced it will reduce the number of visas issued to people in North Africa because governments there are refusing to take back migrants expelled from France. Starting in a few weeks, the French government plans to slash the number of visas given to Algerians and Moroccans by half and Tunisians by 30%. Le Pen gave qualified backing to the visa reduction and suggested that President Emmanuel Macron's government had waited too long before acting. Le Pen was Macron's main rival in the 2017 election, but was overwhelmingly beaten in the runoff. She is seen as Macron's principal opponent if she runs again.
Coming up, the annual Fat Bear Week is back in Alaska. The bulkier the bear, the better. We'll take a look at a few of the contenders. And Saudi Arabia welcomes cruise ships. It's still a novelty in the conservative kingdom, but not for long. The country is working to attract visitors and build up its tourism industry. That and more after this short break.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow,
I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com right now to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you can get my premium MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now just $29.98, the lowest price ever.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
As fans gathered outside the courtroom, a judge ruled in favor of Britney Spears in a case seeking to remove Spears' father as her conservator. While her fans celebrate, her father's attorney expresses disappointment and says the decision is the wrong move. NTD's Jason Blair has the details.
A conservatorship has been in place for Britney Spears since 2008 with her father, Jamie Spears, as her conservator. The 39-year-old singer has been demanding for months that her father be removed from any role in her life.
I'm so pleased and proud to say Jamie Spears is no longer a conservator.
On Wednesday, a judge ruled in favor of Spears' complaints that the situation has been abusive and traumatizing. Free Britney fans gathered outside a Los Angeles court and erupted in cheers as they heard the judge's ruling. Britney Spears' father is out.
I think this is definitely the right first step in the right direction, the suspension, but we still want an end of the conservatorship and just for her to be completely in control of her life again.
After hearing from both sides, Judge Brenda Penny said the current situation is untenable. It reflects a toxic environment which requires the suspension of Jamie Spears. Penny ruled that Spears' father will be temporarily replaced with an accountant. Following the ruling, Spears wrote on Instagram that she was on cloud 9. Spears' father made a surprise request earlier this month to end the conservatorship. His attorneys argued on Wednesday there was no need for him to step down immediately because all sides had agreed to end the arrangement. Meanwhile, Spears' lawyer demanded his immediate removal and said he wanted to avoid answering questions about his actions. A lawyer for Jamie Spears said in response, "Respectfully, the court was wrong to suspend Mr. Spears, put a stranger in his place to manage Britney's estate, and extend the very conservatorship that Britney begged the court to terminate earlier this summer." He also said that Jamie Spears had helped the singer revive her career and reestablish a relationship with her children under the conservatorship, which has governed her personal and financial affairs since she had a mental health breakdown in 2008. A follow-up hearing on whether to terminate Spears' conservatorship entirely is set for November 12th. Jason Blair, NTD News, California.
Saudi Arabia is renting a cruise ship to attract tourists from home and abroad as it opens up its tourism sector. The government says it wants tourism to contribute 10% to GDP by 2030. NTD's Andrew Thomas takes us there.
This cruise ship sails off Saudi Arabia's Red Sea coast. It's a voyage that's still new in the conservative kingdom.
No one ever expected to have something like this, a cruise on this level scale and with the available activities in Saudi Arabia. It's amazing. Everything is available. There is a gym, entertainment activities for children. It's nice if someone wants to bring his family. It is a must-try experience.
Only recently did Saudi Arabia start allowing cruise ships to dock in its ports. Foreign tourism inside Saudi Arabia used to be heavily restricted, until Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman began a drive in 2016 for social reforms. Since then, Saudi Arabia has introduced tourist visas for foreign visitors and launched a series of tourism projects. Jeddah Port launched its cruise ship terminal in July.
I'm on my honeymoon with my wife. As for the cruise, although this is a 3-day trip, it has been very relaxing for us and a completely different experience.
The cruise is also an opportunity for Dalal Muhammad. She booked the trip with her sister to enjoy some of their new freedoms, like traveling without a male guardian.
My sister and I came on the cruise trip. 5 years ago, it would have been a dream to go on a cruise alone. But with the great vision, thank God, the dream came true.
Women in Saudi Arabia still need a male guardian to approve various decisions, but they are now free to travel on their own. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A volcano in Hawaii had its first eruption in nearly a year. It filled the crater at its summit with hot red lava and clouded the skies with volcanic smog this morning. The latest eruption of Hawaii's youngest and most active volcano began on Wednesday afternoon. While the lava presented no immediate threat to populated areas, residents who live downwind of the volcano were warned of possible exposure to volcanic gases. The last time it erupted in December, a water-filled lake on the crater had evaporated, replacing it with a lava lake. 2 years before that, a string of earthquakes and a major eruption led to the destruction of hundreds of homes and businesses as lava flowed down to the ocean for several months, hardening into new land. And with winter just around the corner, it's time for bears to start layering up for hibernation, which means it's time for everyone's favorite annual contest. Fat Bear Week is back.
It's that time of the year again. Fat Bear Week at Alaska's Katmai National Park is here, and only the fattest bears need apply. Hey, really? Is this the fattest bear shot we could get? I mean, I'm talking about fat bears. Whoa, now that's what I'm talking about. Yowza. Hey, listen, there's no fat shaming going on here. Experts say for bears, fat equals survival. The bears at Katmai are packing on the pounds to prepare for hibernation, and once again, the park has turned it into a March Madness-style contest, pitting the bulky bears head-to-head, and anyone can vote for their favorite husky competitor. Like Bear 151, who made this stunning transformation in a matter of months, or the 1,400-pound Bear 747, last year's monstrously chunky champion. Voting is open now and concludes on Fat Bear Tuesday, October 5th.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to catch all of our programs on TV. NTD Evening News is on every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Find your local NTD channel at ntd.com/TV.